New York Times reports Trump's new position on the war in Ukraine, not my problem. In a reversal, President Trump appears to have backed off joining a European push for new sanctions on Russia, seemingly eager to move on to do business deals with it. For months, President Trump has been threatening to simply walk away from the frustrating negotiations for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. After a phone call on Monday between Mr. Trump and President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia, that appears to be exactly what the American president is doing. The deeper question now is whether he is also abandoning America's 3-year-long project to support Ukraine, a nascent democracy that he has frequently blamed for being illegally invaded. Mr. Trump told President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and other European leaders after his call with Mr. Putin that Russia and Ukraine would have to find a solution to the war themselves, just days after saying that only he and Mr. Putin had the power to broker a deal. And he backed away from his own threats to join a European pressure campaign that would include new sanctions on Russia, according to 6 officials who were familiar with the discussion. They spoke on condition of anonymity to describe a private conversation. If the United States decides that they're going to walk away from the deal, that just means that Russia can do whatever they want.
Exactly. Yeah.
And furthermore, Russia is kind of holding all the cards, as using a phrase that Donald Trump likes to talk about. Russia has no problem throwing bodies into the meat grinder. They historically have never had a problem with that, and they have the ability to continue this war, whereas Ukraine is running out of people. There's just not as many Ukrainians. They don't have the infrastructure, and if the United States stops sending them weapons, they're not going to have the ability to do anything.
So let's take off my American hawk hat for a second and put on my Russian hawk hat. So if I'm Vladimir Putin or Sergei Lavrov or any of these people high up, if I'm one of these Russians, I'm trying to wait out the clock on President Trump. It's clear that he and others in the administration aren't considering sending more arms. They want a quick end to this. And so long as Putin isn't playing ball, they're just getting frustrated. And it seems like frustrating President Trump is working, getting him to walk away and not send more arms to these guys. And that's crucial to apply pressure on Putin. So long as he doesn't do that, Putin has no reason to play ball. And then I just try to wait him out if I'm Vladimir Putin and continue trying to take as much of Ukraine as I can. Without U.S. arms and military support and cyber support and different, all of our intel, we provide them with a ton of their different coordinates and everything that they use as coordinates to attack. Without that support from us, Ukraine isn't going to be very much of a worthy opponent to the Russians, and they'd be able to trample over them very quickly. So my plan, if I were Putin, would to just be wait this out. Continue raising up more soldiers. Russians historically don't care about throwing hundreds of thousands of people into the meat grinder so long as they fulfill their irredentist dreams, which I do believe Putin and different people in his administration do have. They want all of Ukraine, and if the United States walks away, I think they have a fair chance of getting it.
It could be that they want all of Ukraine, but we have seen that front line has crystallized and hasn't really moved over the last 18 months, basically. And so there's something to be said of waiting out the clock. That probably is their goal, considering they haven't made a huge offensive in 9 months.
I also don't blame Americans for being sick of sending arms and support to the Ukrainians with not much to show for it after doing so for 3+ years. I mean, I don't even know how long it's been. So I understand the fatigue among Americans.
Well, Americans are just allergic to foreign intervention in general after 20 years in the Middle East. Like we don't differentiate based off which region it's in. We're just sick of it.
Yeah. I mean, even among the Democrats, I feel like support for Ukraine has dwindled. And it's going to be very tough for them. I don't see this ending very well for Ukraine when the United States seems to walk away. That's what Trump's posturing right now, and we'll see if that changes. Maybe something happens where Trump changes his mind.
I don't think that Ukraine was ever the issue when it came to Americans supporting Ukraine. It was always about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The reason that people wanted to support Ukraine or put up Ukraine flags, it was just, we don't like Donald Trump. They might as well have put up a Trump bad sign. Mm-hmm. It had absolutely nothing to do with support for Ukraine, and they don't care about Ukraine. They didn't care when Russia took Crimea and stuff. What does that say? I can't read it.
More like Ukraine is what.
Well, you also see this you see the situation where the way the left thinks is they can't analyze anything beyond a certain point where they just see big country attacking small country. This is bad. Because
Well,
you'll see this alignment on the left where people are pro-Ukraine but also pro-Palestine. And it's like, if you want to be ideologically consistent and you want, let's say your favorite, so to speak, is Ukraine, then why would you be aligned with Palestine? They're on opposite ends of the axis, so to speak.
This is a distinction that Tim makes, right? So the woke people, when Tim describes woke, he describes it as just like I think the phrase he uses is cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy. And those people are the ones that don't have any sense, where it doesn't make any sense why they're supporting one or the other. If you get more granular with leftist thought process, it's all about power struggle, a power dynamic. So the Ukraine is less powerful than Russia, so Ukraine is good. The Palestinians are less powerful than the Israelis, so the Palestinians are good. It's always just about whoever has more power and they're using that power, they're the immoral ones because they have them.
They conceptualize the world as like Star Wars, because you always see them putting memes up, and it's like Putin's the Palpatine. And it's
they're morons. But
their entire worldview is shaped by American media.
Yeah, I mean, well, not only that, but if you look at all of leftist philosophers, all of the people that were writing books, right before like postmodernism became in vogue, right? So in the late 30s, 40s, 50s, and stuff, like when the writers were like people like Marcuse and stuff, they were writing. It's all about power dynamics. It's all about who's got power and who doesn't have power. And if you don't have power and you're resisting people that do have power, that makes you morally good. It doesn't matter if you're blowing up babies or if you're a terrorist or if you're killing people. If you're killing people that are in power, it's bad. It's good. That's why they love Luigi. Luigi killed a man who had a lot of money. That man ostensibly had more power than Luigi, so therefore Luigi's good. It's that simple. It's not in any way deeper than that. It's just stupid leftism.
Yeah, and there's something that Aiden hit on earlier, which was important with the back and forth of the Elaad. It was like sort of conceptualizing Iran, China, and Russia as this united axis, united front against American hegemony. I don't think that tracks, because Russia and China are, like, historically they would be rivals, considering China has aspirations. They see the east of Russia from Vladivostok all the way to, like, was it Tanatuva, whatever the region is to the left of Mongolia. They have aspirations there. So the fact that we keep pushing Russia and China's direction is so frustrating. And you're actually hearing this echoed by a lot of people in the Trump sphere. And I think it's entirely accurate, is like we're not thinking long term about this, of pushing three countries that really don't have much in common. And, Russia and China, I mentioned the Far East, you have Central Asia. They have competing interests there with all the minerals that are there. And, Russia sees these as like their lost Soviet territories, and the Chinese see this as like an extension of China. So you have these overlapping claims. It just makes zero sense that we're pushing Russia in the direction of China, because they should. I mean, following the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a chance there where we could have incorporated them into the Western sphere. So it's just completely mind-boggling foreign policy.
That's verboten to even mention here in the U.S., though. You can't talk about having any kind of positive relations with Russia. If you just the fact that we're talking about it on this show, people are going to be like, oh.
Well, and I don't want to downplay. Like, people take this as like they use this to take a shot at boomers, where they're like, oh, they still view Russia as the Soviet Union. I do want to say, like, if you grew up going to school hiding under desks, like, it's hard to get that out of your mind that there's this adversary. I mean, you can speak.
I was never doing duck and cover, but I do remember the fall of the Soviet Union. I do remember.
Like, you speak to people that were around during the World War. It took them a long time to get over their adversaries in that war. Yeah. So it's like, I don't necessarily give the boomers a hard time. That being said, it's time to get real. It's 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Russia multiple times, and while it's a different place, it doesn't strike me as like the Soviet Union. Right. When I think of what I saw as a kid in movies and stuff like that, or the way it was portrayed. And granted, Hollywood was just portraying Hollywood, and so there was a certain amount of theatrics to what I saw. When I actually went to Russia, like it could have been any other European city, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, arguably, Vladimir Putin does think it is still the Soviet Union, or at least should be, and that's kind of what's pushing the claims. But
hold on, I want to put a pin in that. Do you think that Vladimir Putin has aspirations beyond Ukraine, beyond the territory that he's taken now in Ukraine? Do you think? I personally think he might go for all of Ukraine, but there's a different relationship with Ukraine and the rest of Europe. There are people that are making he'll go for Poland. I don't think that he'll go for any NATO countries at all.
I don't think that he would go that far. I mean, I think maybe he would want to. I just don't think it's possible. They're already having enough of a struggle in Ukraine. I mean, in the early days of the war, they thought the special military operation would last, a week?
Yeah.
And it didn't. And I think, would he go for all of Ukraine? I mean, yeah, I imagine yes. His whole philosophy is pushing that the idea of Ukraine is fictional, right? Created by the administrative structure of the Soviet Union. And of course, there's a lot of pushback on that from the Ukrainians. I think that I don't think he'll ever get the full Ukraine. I mean, the Russians, the thing that the pro-Ukrainian liberals don't talk about is the cost to Ukrainian society. And I think J.D. Vance talked about this. There are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men dead. Like they've lost or maimed an entire generation. People have massively fed the country, especially the women, and it's going to be really tough to recover from that if they do still exist, at the end of the war. And I mean, even Russia, they're pulling convicts from the prisons to go fight because they obviously don't care if their convicts die. But it's also partially to hide the brutality of the war in Russian society. And ultimately, I do think that there will be a deal of some kind. Maybe Putin is trying to wait Trump out. But for as much as Trump and Vance criticize the war and criticize the European Union for not upholding its security obligations, there is still interest in Russia not taking over the whole of Ukraine. I think where, a lot of America First conservatives and regular Americans have this aversion is the immediate European rhetoric is, let's go put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And the Americans think, why would we do that? We just got out of a war, and the war in Ukraine is, it's trench warfare. It's vicious. It's completely different from the wars in the Middle East too. They're like these drone. I've seen some of these videos against my will, and I would not wish that on anybody.
No, it's totally different than
Right.
Afghanistan. It's different than fighting the militias in Iraq. It's totally different.
I do think that Russia has, under Putin, has imperial ambitions of some kind. I think, that's kind of been their entire history. It has always been the push west because the warm water port thing, right? And I don't really see that stopping anytime soon. Maybe after Vladimir Putin is gone, somebody with a different mindset won't pursue that. Who knows? But ultimately, I do think that, especially in the wake of the Wagner rebellion and all that, I think that there is probably some internal pressure that isn't public, and maybe, just maybe, Trump will actually follow through on some kind of commitment. And that's why they're trying to ink the critical mineral deal. Like this is not a situation where America says, "Hey, we're going to give you everything we have, and we just want you to be our friend and be nice." Because every single time we've done that, we've gotten screwed over by civilian governments that don't fulfill their obligations, whatever they are, especially when we were trying and failing to nation build in the Middle East, but even among other countries, even in our hemisphere, that have taken a bunch of Chinese money and don't follow the actual interests of their country and or our lead. And so I think that if Zelensky is open and willing to negotiate an actual fair price for U.S. involvement, then maybe we'll work something out. But we don't owe them anything.
Well, if this if this New York Times piece is accurate, it doesn't sound like there will be any kind of mineral deal coming out of the Ukraine either, because if the U.S. is just going to walk away from the deal, the peace deal, I don't see, companies wanting to go into Ukraine and actually do any kind of infrastructure work that would take to actually do mining or to get the rare earths out of the ground.
Then I would maybe say to them, find a different deal you're willing to make. It's the same concept with the Houthis, and I've talked to other people about that issue. It's okay. The U.S. is the only. I think there was an article recently saying how the U.S. is the only country with the capability to strike the Houthis, and that France and the other European countries can't. They can't even defend an area, a geographic area that is most important to them without our help. And to that, I say, pay up.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.